Joel, we are so pleased to have you with us today. It is an honor and a privilege, and it's just incredible that even though we've known each other a relatively short time, I feel like I've known you for a very long time. So, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you so much, Mary, for having me on this awesome program. I'm so excited to talk to you about my book and just politics,
Yes,
whatever.
we've got a lot to cover. We've already discussed, just so the listeners know, we've already discussed offline. There will be an encore production, just so you know. We are pleased to announce that Joel Maldonado is our newest affiliate partnership. His book, The Binding Oath, A Border Patrol Journey and the Mayorkas Effect, is now available for purchase on our website. Go to www.awaketotruth.org, click on the shop page, and then click on merch, and you will find his book there. By purchasing the book through us, you will get a personalized, autographed copy from Joel himself. In his book, he shares compelling stories from his days as a Border Patrol agent. Some of those stories will make you laugh, some will make you cry. His purpose in writing the book was to educate Americans on the issues of illegal immigration and the harmful politics involved. He was a Border Patrol agent for 28 years. Ultimately, he retired because of what he saw as the dereliction of duty, primarily Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas. We hope that you will purchase Joel's book and educate yourself on what is really going on at the border. Thank you very much. I cannot tell you how much I have enjoyed reading your book. It's amazing. Maybe that's one of the reasons why I feel like I know you better than I actually do. So I'd like you to start out. Let's just start with that. I'd like you to share with the audience how you felt about the code, honor first. Let's start with how that made you feel as a young recruit.
Well, first of all, thank you for that, for mentioning my book. The title of the book is called "The Binding Oath: A Border Patrol Journey and the Mayorkas Effect." And the reason I came up with that is because our code, our motto for the U.S. Border Patrol is honor first. Simple as that. Two words, honor first. So if that is to be taken as the variable, that is what we're all supposed to do. Then you have to go back to the U.S. Constitution, because when we took an oath to do this job, we decided that we were going to uphold the U.S. Constitution, and by
Mhm,
upholding the U.S. Constitution, you are agreeing to everything it stands for, including all the laws
mhm,
that are derived from the U.S. Constitution. So, if we are indeed a nation of laws, Mary, then
mhm.
why in the world would we ignore the Constitution? So
Exactly.
if we are indeed a constitutional republic, we're not a democracy. Let's get that straight,
Right.
because if you have a problem with that, then this interview's over, right? We agreed to uphold the Constitution, and we agreed to every law that this constitutional republic decided that is best to protect its citizens. And so the binding oath is that oath that you took before God Himself, that you would uphold that Constitution. So it is a binding contract. There is no deviating from it. And so that's why. So if there's any credence to the words "honor first," then you will not ignore the Constitution and that oath that you took to uphold it.
Right. Another thing that touched me very deeply at the very beginning of your book was what your father told you when you received your information back from the Border Patrol.
Yes, when I got the word through a FedEx message that I that I was in, it was, wow, one of the greatest days of my life. It was an amazing experience, and my dad, who had been quiet through the whole process, and he's a first generation immigrant, but he's proud to be. Um, uh, you know, he's proud to be an American for all intents and purposes. He is proud of this country because this country is what's given this family everything, and so
Mhm.
his loyalties are to this country, like I am. My loyalties are to the United States of America, and so. But he was quiet during, but probably because he was nervous about my choice in profession. Law enforcement is it's not easy on any parent. I doubt.
No,
Any parent would say,
that's
"Oh, go for it." So,
that is very understandable.
yes, and so he sat me down and opened up Romans chapter 13, verses 1 through 5, and I read it, and he read it to me, and that's when it sunk in what I was about to do. It was just an emotional time for me. It was like
Mhm.
it said that the gist of that passage, and people can always look it up and read it for themselves, but it says that I would be uh, I would be taking this oath, and that I would be an actual um, representative, an authority figure for God, representing God. Because this is a big task here. This
Mhm.
is, and that's where part of that passage is what um, contributed to the title of my book, The Binding Oath. So.
That was probably the best piece of advice that your father could have given you. And the fact that he took it straight out of the Bible really just really pierces my heart. Well, that's a great lead in to my next question. One of my favorite stories in your book was about Santiago and his family and his commitment to you and how all of that played out. And uh, Black Dog too. So I'd like you to please just share that story. That was very compelling.
So Santiago was
Okay.
an informant of mine, just so your listeners will know.
Mhm.
He was an informant of mine, and he he'd risked his life to basically do great things. We apprehended dozens upon dozens of criminal aliens, smugglers, and we arrested hundreds upon hundreds of illegal aliens, and we just we did such great work under just the information that he provided, and in the end, he was betrayed by the government that paroled him and his family in. I was able to parole him in. I did all the paperwork. I did all these things to get him in here. He's a legal resident, by the way. But the deal that we shook hands and came to an agreement, said, "Look, I will parole your family in if you provide information. It's going to risk your life, and you're going to have to help me. You're going to have to call me. You're going to have to do all these things." And I documented in the book. I think that your readers, your listeners, will enjoy this story about Santiago, that whole chapter. But in the end, he is betrayed. And the reason I tell that story about Santiago is because it's a microcosm of what happens to me. So Santiago
Okay.
was an informant of mine, just so your listeners will
Mhm.
know. He was an informant of mine, and he he'd risked his life to basically do great things. We apprehended dozens upon dozens of criminal aliens, smugglers, and we arrested hundreds upon hundreds of illegal aliens, and we just we did such great work under just the information that he provided, and in the end, he was betrayed by the government that paroled him and his family in. I was able to parole him in. I did all the paperwork. I did all these things to get him in here. He's a legal resident, by the way. But the deal that we shook hands and came to an agreement, said, "Look, I will parole your family in if you provide information. It's going to risk
Mhm.
your life, and you're going to have to help me. You're going to have to call me. You're going to have to do all these things." And I documented in the book. I think that your readers, your listeners will enjoy this story about Santiago, that whole chapter. But in the end, he is betrayed. And the reason I tell that story about Santiago is because it's a microcosm of what happens to me. Um, uh, I don't think you've gotten to the end of my. I won't ruin it for you, Mary, but it's really it's foreshadowing what happens.
Well, let's go ahead and talk about whatever portions you're comfortable sharing.
Well, as far as Santiago and everything is like, uh, I just well, the government promises something and then they don't follow through, depending on who the elected official is, and that by definition is treason. That by definition is treason. Like right now, look, Article 1 of the US Constitution, Section 8, spells it out for what the government is supposed to do. It
Mhm.
guarantees a Republican form of government. A Republican form of government. That's why we're a constitutional republic. It also guarantees the safety and well-being of
Mhm.
every citizen. And how is that done, Mary? It's through a strong military and through
Mhm.
protecting its borders, whether it's with the military or with the U.S. Border Patrol, the DEA that protects us from fentanyl, the FBI, who's supposed to take care of when people get in and investigate things like that. All of these things, all these federal agencies are there because of Article 1 of the U.S. Constitution. That is the only two things that the U.S. Constitution is supposed to guarantee. It's not supposed to guarantee welfare from cradle to grave. It's not supposed to guarantee anything else. That it has two jobs to protect its citizen and guarantee every state a Republican form of government. And then under Article 1, Section 4, it also guarantees that every state is supposed to help an individual state in the case of an invasion.
That's right.
What's going on right now is an invasion. And and
Exactly.
and it's a manufactured invasion. So our very own government is allowing this to happen and enticing it. And I
Mhm.
get into how it's doing that, but I'm telling you right now that is treason. And
It
and so
is.
Alejandro, Santiago, which my informant, what happened to him is that he was guaranteed safety for his family, that they would come in as long as he provided, and he was always providing. In fact, he was at the uh, epitome of. I mean, he was providing, and yet they pulled it from under just this one guy, and he's in the story as a black dog, and I mask names and I call all kinds of stuff, but
Sure.
Black Dog betrayed him, and and uh, and um, and that's just exactly how the government is operating
Right.
when they don't follow the Constitution, when they don't follow God's laws, when they don't follow the motto "honor first," because
Mhm.
there is no honor in giving your word and then changing the rules, and there is no
That is
honor. There's no honor in telling the American citizens that we're going to protect our borders and not protect them. There is no honor in that.
exactly. And I will tell you straight up, the number one thing I began focusing on when I very first began Awake to Truth ministry and podcast was border issues, because a friend of mine made an impactful statement to me, I don't know, a couple of years ago. He said, with no border, there is no America. I never forgot that statement. And when I began this mission, that was what I focused on, was the border. The fact that I grew up in South Texas, close to the border, certainly that had a factor in my decision making, but it was just what I felt God was calling me to do, and that's why I I started this and began with border issues, and it's a border invasion, exactly as you have said.
Right, right, and you touched on something there. Is that going back to the Constitution? The Constitution says straight up in the lingo that we,
Mhm.
as a sovereign nation, have a right to protect our borders. So
Absolutely.
without it, we're not a sovereign nation. We have what we have now. We have an open borders, deluge of masses of people coming in and committing murders and stuff. And when you're not vetting people and you're just letting them come in like this, you have the rapes and murders and stuff that's going on right now that is not even
Exactly.
reported. A lot of it is not even reported.
Of course not. They don't want that bad press.
Mm,
They want everyone to think that, all of these people coming here are just seeking a better life. And that's not true,
no, it's not.
sadly. I mean, sure, there are some, without doubt, but the
Of
vast
course.
majority are not. Vast majority are
Well,
here to do something.
actually, to be very fair, the majority are decent people, but they're I don't care if it's a small minority of people committing crimes. They shouldn't even be here. But it's not a small minority. It's a big chunk of those people. But yeah, the most of them are you know decent people. But again, when they're violating the immigration laws, that by definition is a criminal.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Yep. Well, I think we probably both agree that this is a planned,
Yes,
purposeful takedown of America. And it goes much farther than just the southern border or even our northern border. It starts overseas, and our government is complicit in that. And
absolutely,
I,
it is.
yeah,
It is, and they're letting these puppet masters like Soros and all these
mhm,
people um, run the show, and I can prove it to you, Mary. I can prove it to you. See, um, Article 33 of the Convention Act. That is a United Nations agreement. In other words, international law. Remember that
mhm,
number, Article 33. See, that's
mhm,
what deals with refugees, okay? And the U.S. is a signature. They signed off on that,
mhm,
and that's fine. That's fine, because all the United Nations, they all signed that, and they all agreed that refugees cannot be sent to a place where they may be tortured or killed or treated in an inhumane way, right? So we can
mhm.
understand that, and there are this world is a nasty place, and some people are nasty people. That's just the way it is, and I can agree with that, and I understand that. But it's known as refoulement. The just remember that term because Article 33 they use that in the United Nations. It's called refoulement. In other words, you cannot send somebody who is a bona fide refugee. You cannot send him to the place where he came, where he was seeking refuge from. You cannot do that. However, notice how even the Biden administration they refer to all these illegal aliens. They refer to them as what? Migrants, right? Or
Mhm.
asylum seekers,
Right.
or undocumented citizens. They refer
Right.
to them as everything except refugee. You know why? I'm going to explain it to your listeners now, Mary. Article 33 is if well, first I'll explain that, but first let me explain that nobody at the border right now, nobody, everyone that we have let in these past Biden years does not qualify as a refugee by definition, and that's why Article 33 has not been enforced. Number one. Number two, this administration invented a word called asylum seeker. There is no such thing. You can look in the Immigration and Nationality Act. You're not going to find the word asylum seeker. Now you'll find the word asylum, which is somebody who qualifies under Article
Mhm.
33.
Right.
But you will not find the word asylum seeker. And you know why they invented the word asylum seeker? That's because, by the way, an asylum seeker, according to them, is someone who is seeking international protection. I'm going to read from what I wrote down. Asylum seeker is someone who is also seeking international protection from dangers in his or her home country, but whose claim for refugee status hasn't been determined legally. So, okay, that's an invented word, asylum seeker, because either they're a refugee or they're not. So,
Exactly.
so I'm asking you now, Mary, I'm asking you, if they are seeking international protection, why hasn't Article 33 been implemented? Why
Because they
hasn't
don't. Well, because they don't qualify.
that they don't qualify, number one. But also, why hasn't their claim been determined yet? If they are indeed refugees, why are they allowed to come? Why aren't they why don't they apply these Article 33 things to them? That's why they keep on using that term asylum seekers, so they can let them in, and then later on they can go before an immigration judge, and then they can determine no, they're either a refugee or they're not. Their claim is either
Mhm.
credible or it's not. So,
Right.
so Article 3 requirements. Here is why the government refuses to even call them refugees. It's because they know that the U.S. would have to surrender their sovereignty. Number one, because I don't know. Yeah, of course you'll remember, and because I remember in the what was it, late '80s, maybe '90s, where Ethiopia had the famine. Remember that?
Oh yeah, sure.
Well, remember all the neighboring countries had to let them in, because they signed off to this deal, and so,
Mhm.
but with it comes the international community, the UN, and they allow this mass migration, but with it comes help and aid. Are we receiving any help from the world? For
No.
all of these people coming in? No, this we're all footing the bill. The US taxpayer
Yes.
is footing the bill. So there is no international help. There is no refugee status. There is nothing like that. We're just calling them asylum seekers. So and because they're seeking asylum, we have to let them in, and then later they will determine that is unconstitutional. That is illegal under our immigration laws. And I'll tell you why. Okay, so the rules under our law, under the Immigration and Nationality Act, which is derived from the US Constitution, provides, stipulates that if you are an asylum seeker, or no, not an asylum, that if you're a refugee seeking refugee status, you must come from a contiguous country. What does that mean, Mary? That means that you
That
have to
means
be from Canada or from Mexico to qualify
right,
to enter this
right.
country. So the fact that you're coming from Venezuela, going through Panama, coming through all these countries, or actually being flown by the United States from Venezuela into our country, that is illegal. The fact that they are
Right.
not coming from a contiguous country, that means they are deportable at entry under
Wow.
our law, and it's
And
not being
needless and needless to say, the Chinese and those from the Middle East definitely would not qualify. So there you
absolutely
have it
not.
again.
Absolutely not. They need to go to the nearest contiguous country that would give them Venezuela, for example. They are
Mhm.
offered asylum in Colombia. They have they it's still a standing offer, and but they're not happy there. What they want is economic status. They want economic
Mhm.
refugee status. They want greener pastures. So that's why they're allowing them to use this term asylum seeker instead of Article 33. And your listeners and very few people know about this. A lot of people will be enlightened after hearing this, and they
Mhm.
will be appalled. And it's also in my book, a lot of this stuff. Another thing, agents. Okay, contiguous country, right? That's number one.
Mhm.
Number two, Mary, is they have to present themselves at the door. Kind of like if you go to someone's house, you go knock at the
Mhm.
door, right? You knock at the
Right.
door. However, the door for our country is the port of entry. In other words, the bridges
Hmm.
or the international airports. That is the door. So they have to go to the door and claim credible fear or claim their refugee status. You know what they're doing? They're crossing through our windows. They're crossing illegally through areas not designated as ports of entry.
Hmm.
So when they
Exactly.
cross illegally, they are violating 8 USC 1325, which means illegal entry. That means they
Mhm.
are deportable upon encounter. So all these masses that are crossing, and you see all these agents with big smiles and grabbing them and giving them their paperwork to go on or flying them out and all this stuff, that's illegal. We're violating our oath by allowing them to come in. The fact that they came through an area not designated as a port of entry makes them deportable upon encounter. 8 USC 1325. It's also a violation of INA section 212 A6A. Those are the statutes that people are welcome to look up.
Mhm.
Another thing, the third thing, agents are not allowed to implement their lawful constitutional authority as per the INA 235 and 287. That's statutory law that we have to determine when these people come in, and then we have every right as border patrol agents to say, why are you coming to this country? Oh, it's because
Mhm.
I'm afraid of poverty. Well, that's not an asylum claim. So we have the right to deliberate it right there. We have a right to say, hey, to mitigate that issue right there and say, hey, well, you're deportable because that didn't qualify. Or if they say, well, it's because I'm a homosexual and I'm afraid for my life. Well, as for the last time I checked, Mary, nobody in Venezuela, nobody in Guatemala. In fact, Guatemala has a gay president. Nobody is killing anybody in South or Central America for being gay. In fact, the same kind of treatment they're going to receive over there, they're going to receive it here. There's going to be people that are that they're the term they use is homophobic, but there's going to be people everywhere like that. And this country is no refuge from homosexuality. So that right there, we could say, well, that's not an excuse. You need to head back. We need to put you in the next plane out of here.
Mhm.
Uh, every excuse they're using, whether they're afraid of poverty, they're afraid that they're homosexuals, that they're afraid of gangs. That's a big one right now. None of those are excusable. We as agents under 235 and 287 have a right to determine that they are illegal aliens. We have a right to determine alienage, and that's not happening right now. And more importantly, the burden of proof is always on the illegal alien. That is they are the ones that have to say, "Look, I was a member of the party that contradicted Maduro in Venezuela, and they're
Mhm.
after my family right now because I was the president of that party, and and there could be a minute amount of people that qualify, but the burden of proof is on them, not on us to prove it. They have to prove it. But instead, we're not allowed to ask questions as Border Patrol agents. We have to let them in with the promise that they'll show up, which they never do. And
Of
then
course not.
we let them into the country. They go in and rape, and they do all these crimes. So the thing I like to use, Mary, all the time. I use this analogy all the time, and that's okay. Imagine somebody entering at your home at 2 o'clock in the morning, and they're knocking at the door. Well, we as agents are those watchmen. We're the ones that answer the door. At your house, it would be you or your husband or whatever. They go and answer the door and say, "What do you want?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm afraid for my life." "Oh yeah, what are you afraid of? Where are you coming from? Why don't you go to that neighbor?" Or what? You have a right to ask questions before you let a stranger in your house, and they
Mhm.
have to come to the door. Mary, what happens when they come through your window?
You have no control. Well, y-
Exactly. You know what you would do as a homeowner.
yes, I
They
do.
So why are we as a country allowing them to come in through our windows and not kicking them out? For crying out loud, it's not a hard concept to understand. And I'm sorry if I'm becoming a little animated, but it's how passionate I feel about this. This is common sense. Now,
It is.
if you don't understand constitutional law, I get it. If you don't understand legal law, I get it. Immigration law, I get it. But if you don't understand common sense law, then I have problems with that.
I don't think it's a matter of a lack of understanding some of those things. I think it's more of a choice to go a different direction, and it's called globalism.
Yes. Yes, and that's what's
And
going on when you're allowing Article 33 things to happen. That's globalism, but you're not allowing it to define it as such because you know that there are certain rules. Did you know that
mhm,
uh, that by not by accepting Article 33 requirements, which saying that we can't deport them under Article 33, but yet not defining it as such, we allow the US Constitution to be circumvented. We are allowing the immigration laws to be ignored. That's what's happening in as we speak. Because did you know that if we count them as refugees, we actually, let's say Mexico had a famine and they truly had a serious situation over there. Did you know that that we would have to create camps for them or something, and the United Nations, the international community would have to help pay, and we would watch them. And we have a right, even under the famine clause, we have a right as a nation to say, "Oh, you're a refugee, but you have not been admitted."
right.
These illegal aliens that are asylum seekers, we're admitting into this country. So that means they have access to our schools, they have access to welfare, they have access to everything. But under
Mhm.
Article 33, as a refugee, that's why the Biden administration is not calling them refugees. Um, that's why they are allowed to not be called refugees because then we could ask them more questions. We could say,
Mhm.
"Hey, what are your intentions for coming in?" Or also, "Hey, you have measles, you have COVID, you have AIDS, you have a contagious disease. You
Mhm.
cannot be allowed in."
Right.
We can exclude them under even as refugees. We can, but under the asylum seeker, we have to let them in. And believe me, Mary, as an agent, we let people with COVID. They were shutting us down. They were going to fire border patrol agents for not getting the COVID shot. Yet we were allowed to release illegal aliens with COVID. Does that make any freaking sense to you? You know,
Not one bit. Well,
and
I'm going to say something else. There were numerous cities across the U.S. that said, "Oh, we want to be sanctuary cities and help these people, and help them assimilate and everything when they get here." Well, now they're starting to see the repercussions of that, and they're starting to say, "This is not working out like we thought it would," and they are secretly deporting these people. What have you seen and heard about that?
um, I haven't heard of anybody being deported. In fact, even the in New York City, that Venezuelan that beat the crap out of that poor police officer who was trying to effect an arrest on the
Mm-hmm.
ground, and he was kicking him. Well, that guy
Mm-hmm.
was a member of the Tren de Aragua, which is a notorious international gang out of Venezuela. And Tren de Aragua will be known as, they'll be a household name before you know it, just like MS-13 is. Right now, people haven't heard of Tren de Aragua as much, but remember that those words, Tren de Aragua, they are very violent, and they're going to be a force to be reckoned with because we're letting them in because Maduro released all his prisons and he released all his mental institutions, and they came straight over here. That was the promise that they had to make. We will release you, but you have to come to the United States. And we, like idiots, let them in.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So now that word sanctuary city, that's against the law, by the way, because if we are a nation of laws and we have immigration laws, how can a certain municipality ignore existing law? It's the
Mhm.
same. That's the same mentality that Mayorkas has. Is that he feels that he can ignore immigration law and not be held accountable. That, by definition, is treason. When you're hired to be this beacon of of law and you're not enforcing any law. For example, did you know that it's illegal to let somebody in if they have health related issues and we let them in? That's against
Mhm.
immigration law. It's illegal.
Right.
Did you know that under INA 212A4, it's illegal to become a public charge? So if you're let in as a migrant and you get on the welfare rolls, or you go to a hospital and not pay for the bill, which is happening by the millions,
Of
that you
course.
become a public charge. You are deportable. That's not happening. Did you know that if you're an illegal alien that cannot fend for himself, like you have epilepsy or you are you have something um, uh, and did you know that you're deportable because you will become a public charge? And if you are healthy and have that person in tow, you are deportable also because you are the guardian of that person that will become a public charge. That's a law that exists. Did you know that there's under INA 237A4B that if you're involved in terrorist activity, you are deportable? So all these students that are here on visas, they're not even
Mhm.
they're non-immigrants. They are deportable. Yet we're allowing them to march out there and make fools of this nation, and that's a deportable offense. Our Immigration and Nationality Act is so stout that even adultery is a deportable offense. It's in the books. Now, no, it won't ever be enforced. But however,
No.
my point is this, Mary, is that we have a very stout Immigration and Nationality Act that is derived from the U.S. Constitution. If we were to enforce any of those laws, we wouldn't have the problems that we're having today. That is what the gist of my book is, that we just need to enforce existing law
Exactly.
and quit saying that we need to overhaul this broken immigration system. It's not broken. We're just not enforcing the law that exists. And I hate when even Republicans say we need sensible immigration. No, what are you talking about? Those are just rhinos talking about
Mhm.
um, mark my words, when they start talking like that and saying that we need to overhaul the immigration system or this and that,
Mhm.
what they're really saying is they want amnesty.
Mhm.
They're treasonous rhinos, and believe me, I'm not such a partisan that I can't see that our side is also guilty of treason.
Exactly. Absolutely. We would not have some of the problems facing us now if we didn't have some treasonous Republicans. It's not just one side or the other. There is a uniparty in DC that is very strongly in control, and that's the very group that's causing these problems.
Right, and the uniparty is what is allowing the globalism to happen.
Yes.
So and so your listeners need to hear these things and look up what I brought up if they have any doubts whatsoever. But this is all in the Immigration and Nationality Act. Now,
Mhm.
remember, Article 33 of the United Nations Agreement will not be implemented in this country because a refugee status does not admit people. It just lets them. It's like you saying, "Hey, I see that you have fear, but you can stay right here where we keep the umbrellas. You're right there. You're not admitted. You have no due process. You don't have you're not you don't have all the benefits because once you're allowed in, like we're paroling all these illegal aliens in, we're paroling. Well, now they have access to due process, and so uh, and so that is why we have this dilemma. That is why people say, "Well, no, we can't deport them," or this. And that." Well, it's because we should have let them in the first place. Um,
Right.
this whole term asylum seeker is a made up manufactured thing because it's a manufactured crisis because they're counting on years later that these people are now part of the fabric of America. We can't deport these poor people. Just watch. We're gonna there we're all
Hmm.
these people we're letting in. We're never gonna deport them. Um, Now, one last thing to remember about the refugee laws is that it can only happen it can only happen during an urgent humanitarian need, like a catastrophic thing, like a hurricane. But even that is there's corruption in that. Like for example, do you remember Hurricane Mitch in 1998?
Vaguely.
That hit Central America. It hit Honduras. Well, all those people are still here. We still hadn't deported them. They came over here supposedly to seek refuge, and they're still here. And now we can't deport them because they have kids and this and that. That is wrong. And there's also here's the big one: the significant public benefit. There has to be significant public benefit to let these people in. And what is the significant public benefit to let all these people in right now for the United States of America? There is none, except the public benefit would be that Democrats have future votes
Right.
and liberal Republicans have cheap labor.
Hmm.
That is what happens. That's the significant public benefit that they see. But for the American people and the taxpayer, there is no significant public benefit. Now, these are called economic refugees. There is no such thing in the Immigration and Nationality Act that gives status to an economic refugee. You cannot come to this country because you want a better life. I'm sorry, that's just not in the law books. Now, if they're seeking you to kill you, then people say, "Oh, Jesus was a refugee." Yeah, but somebody was trying to kill him. And and
True.
uh so and and Jesus didn't violate any immigration law. We can get into that later, but that's the gist of the my book is that this is a manufactured crisis, and Mayorkas is a treasonous um troll for doing all this.
So, as the you know head of DHS, he is in control of all of this, and he can just make rules as he wishes, regardless of what the Constitution says. And you, as a Border Patrol agent, were mandated to follow that.
And uh well, yes and no. The yes to that's what's happening. But no, he's
Hmm.
not allowed to just make rules as he goes along because he also took the oath that I took, Mary. He took the same oath. And he
Well, let
has
me
to abide by the US Constitution and all the laws that are derived from it. He
maybe I
can't
should restate that. I mean, he's not allowed to, but he's doing it with no repercussions because
no
he's not. Yeah, and that's the problem.
yeah,
They
and
tried to impeach.
even the weak Republicans that say, "Oh, let's impeach him." What are you wasting your time with impeaching him? Because then Biden would just put another puppet up there. Um,
Hmm. True.
he needs to be okay. I'm going to refrain from using the word, but he needs to be at the very least be arrested for treason. But you know what the real guilty what when you're found guilty of treason, uh, uh, what you could face. But
Hmm.
let's start by arresting him. He needs to be arrested for treason, for allowing all this to happen.
So, when you started thinking about retiring, was there a specific incident that caused that, or was it because of all of this that you've seen since Mayorkas has been in power?
Kids, day in, day out. It was too much for me to take. It was too much for anybody to take. People, I just couldn't, in good conscience, continue to do that and say that I was upholding honor first and upholding the Constitution. I couldn't, in good conscience, say that. But I'm going to be completely honest. What finally did it for me was as, as you know or will know when you get to the end of my book, is I retired out of the Uvalde station, and after that shooting,
Yes.
and what I witnessed and things I saw, and it was just it was time to call it a day. It was a tough thing to, it was really just the thing that pushed me over to go ahead and say, hey, let's go, let's go.
Thank you so much for your service to America, your service to the state of Texas. You have been an incredible, just an incredible blessing to our country. And I thank you and your family for the sacrifices you've made, because I know your family sacrificed as well.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
And
you for
so I want to
mentioning
say
that.
thank
Yes, I neglect to say that my wife is also deserves some kind of medal or something. She put up with a lot of stuff and the demons in my head and all kinds of memories that I've repressed. And writing this book has been very therapeutic. That's not why I did it. I did it because I felt like a voice that needed to be heard. And
Mhm.
I think people will be angry when they read this book, but believe me, they'll laugh, they'll cry, they'll get angry, and it just needs to be said. So I appreciate you having me on, because you have awesome platform and an awesome uh, podcast, and I'm glad to that you have me on.
Well, it has truly been my pleasure. And I look forward to 2.0. We'll
Yes,
just call it.
let's do it.
Thank you for watching the Awake to Truth podcast. Please follow me on X at Awake to Truth _. Also, subscribe to my Rumble channel at Awake to Truth Ministries. Our website is www.awaketotruth.org. I'm Mary Starr, your messenger of truth and resources, and may God richly bless you.